My name is Emily, and I am 29 years old. I was supposed to be my grandfather Henry's only heir. He promised me his $10 million fortune and the family business. But after his death, my parents and sister Olivia orchestrated the ultimate betrayal. They rewrote his will, took everything that was rightfully mine, and when I questioned them, my father dragged me out of our home by my hair. I warned them they would regret it, but they never saw what was coming. If you are watching from a place where family has betrayed you, drop a comment below, hit like, and subscribe to see how I turned this devastating betrayal into the most satisfying revenge. My grandfather Henry was not just any grandfather. He was my hero, my mentor, and the only person in my family who truly understood me. Born to immigrant parents, he built his logistics company, Blackwell Logistics, from nothing but determination and grit. By the time I was born, he had transformed it into a multi-million-dollar enterprise that employed hundreds of people across 3 states. From my earliest memories, Grandpa Henry and I shared a special connection. While my parents were always busy with their own lives, and my younger sister Olivia's endless activities, my grandfather made time for me. Every Sunday, he would take me fishing at Lake Evergreen, just the two of us sitting quietly by the water as he shared stories of his business triumphs and failures. "The key to success isn't avoiding mistakes, Emily," he would say, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "It's learning from them and having the courage to try again." During summer breaks, he would bring me to his office, letting me sit in on meetings and teaching me the intricacies of international shipping logistics. By the time I was 16, I could read a balance sheet better than most business school graduates. Employees would smile knowingly when I walked in, whispering about how I was the future of Blackwell Logistics. At night, we would sit in his library, a grand room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with business biographies and economic textbooks. He would read to me from his favorites, teaching me lessons about leadership and integrity that school never covered. "One day, all of this will be yours," he would tell me, gesturing to the books, the business, the legacy he had built. "Not because you are my granddaughter, but because you have earned it." I believed him completely. Why wouldn't I? He had never broken a promise to me before. My family dynamic was complicated, to say the least. My father, Michael, worked as the chief financial officer at Blackwell Logistics. He was a stern man who rarely showed affection. Looking back, I now recognize the resentment in his eyes whenever Grandpa Henry praised my business instincts. Dad had spent decades working under his father-in-law, never quite measuring up to the old man's expectations. My mother, Susan, was no better. A former beauty queen who married into money, she dedicated her life to maintaining appearances and social climbing. She focused her attention on my younger sister Olivia, who shared her love for shopping gossip and the superficial trappings of wealth. Olivia was 4 years younger than me, spoiled from birth, and uninterested in anything that required actual effort. While I studied business textbooks, she scrolled through social media. While I interned at the company during summers, she lounged by the pool at the country club. Yet somehow, she was the golden child in my parents' eyes. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" my mother would ask when I came home with dirt under my nails from helping Grandpa in his garden. Look at her. Always so presentable. I learned early to stop seeking their approval. Instead, I channeled my energy into making my grandfather proud. I graduated high school as valedictorian, earned a full scholarship to Harvard Business School, and graduated summa cum laude with a degree in business administration. All while working part-time at Blackwell Logistics, learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. My dream was clear. I would take over as CEO when Grandpa Henry retired, modernize our operations, and expand the company globally. He encouraged this vision, introducing me to industry contacts as the future of Blackwell Logistics, and gradually increasing my responsibilities within the company. By 29, I was effectively running the day-to-day operations as Chief Operations Officer. The employees respected me not because I was the boss's granddaughter, but because I had earned their trust through hard work and fair leadership. I never pulled rank or demanded special treatment. I started in the mailroom like everyone else and worked my way up. The only cloud over this perfect professional picture was the growing tension at home. As Grandpa Henry gave me more responsibilities at Blackwell, my father became increasingly hostile. Dinner conversations turned into interrogations about my decisions at the company. He would question my strategies in front of Olivia, trying to make me look incompetent. "Do you really think expanding into South American markets is wise, given the political instability there?" he would ask, his tone condescending. "I've run the numbers and developed contingency plans," I would reply, trying to keep my voice steady. "The potential growth outweighs the risks." "We'll see what your grandfather thinks," he would say, though Grandpa had already approved my proposals. Meanwhile, Olivia would sit there smirking behind her wine glass, enjoying the show. At 24, she had accomplished nothing beyond maintaining her social media presence and dating a series of increasingly wealthy men. Yet somehow, in my parents' eyes, she could do no wrong. "Not everyone needs to be a workaholic." My mother would defend her when I pointed out her lack of ambition. "Olivia has other talents." Those talents apparently included manipulating our parents and spending money she hadn't earned. But I didn't care. As long as I had Grandpa Henry's support and the promise of the company, I could endure their pettiness. Looking back, I should have seen the signs, the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. The way my mother suddenly became interested in the company, asking questions about revenue and assets. The increasing frequency of family-only dinners that excluded me because I was working late, but I was too focused on proving myself at Blackwell Logistics to notice the storm brewing at home. The last normal day I remember was my 29th birthday. Grandpa Henry took me to our favorite steakhouse and presented me with an antique pocket watch that had belonged to his father. For the next generation of Blackwell leadership, he said, his eyes misty, "I couldn't be prouder of the woman you've become, Emily." I had no idea that within 3 months, everything would change, that the family I thought I knew would reveal their true colors in the most devastating way possible. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I found Grandpa Henry collapsed on the floor of his office. I had stopped by to discuss a new contract with a major retail chain and instead found him unconscious, his breathing shallow. I called 911 with trembling hands, riding in the ambulance while frantically trying to reach my parents. He had a stroke, the doctor told us in the hospital waiting room. But tests revealed something more concerning. "I'm afraid we found advanced stage pancreatic cancer. It's already spread to his liver." The room spun around me as she continued talking about 6 months at most and making him comfortable. My grandfather, the invincible titan of industry, the man who seemed eternal to me, was dying. "I need to speak with my granddaughter alone," he said when he regained consciousness, his voice weaker than I had ever heard it. My parents exchanged glances but left the room without argument. "Listen carefully, Emily," he said, gripping my hand with surprising strength. "Things are going to get complicated. Trust only what I've told you directly. Promise me you'll be strong." "I promise," I whispered, trying to hold back tears. "But you're going to fight this right. We'll get the best treatment specialists from anywhere in the world." He smiled sadly. "I've lived a good life, my dear. Built something that will outlast me. Now I need to make sure it passes to the right hands." Over the next few weeks, I practically lived at the hospital. I brought work with me, running the company from a chair beside his bed, determined not to let Blackwell Logistics falter while he was ill. We talked about business, yes, but also about life, regrets, and the future. "I've made arrangements," he told me during one of his more lucid moments. "Everything is set for you to take over. The board knows my wishes. The transition plan is in place." "Don't talk like that," I said, squeezing his hand. "You'll be back in that office before you know it." He shook his head. "We both know better. Promise me you'll protect what I've built. Not just the money, but the principles, fair wages, ethical practices, community involvement." "I promise," I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. What I didn't expect was how quickly my family's behavior would change. Suddenly, my parents were at the hospital constantly. My mother, who had visited my grandfather perhaps twice a year before his diagnosis, now brought him homemade soup daily. My father started bringing financial documents for Grandpa to review, closing the door whenever I entered the room. Even Olivia started showing up wearing subdued outfits I had never seen before, asking Grandpa Henry questions about the business that she had never shown interest in previously. "I just think it's important for me to understand the family legacy," she explained when I asked about her sudden interest. "After all, we're all in this together, right?" The most troubling development was when my access to Grandpa became increasingly restricted. The nurses, apparently on my parents' instructions, limited my visiting hours, claiming he needed rest whenever I arrived. Meanwhile, my parents and Olivia seemed to have unlimited access. "He's sleeping now," my mother would say, blocking the doorway. "Come back tomorrow." But I would catch glimpses of him through the door, wide awake and in deep conversation with my father. One afternoon, I arrived to find Robert Ellis, my grandfather's longtime attorney, leaving the room. His expression was unreadable as he nodded at me in the hallway. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "Why do you need legal counsel?" "Just updating some paperwork," he said vaguely. "Nothing to worry about." When I entered the room, Grandpa Henry looked troubled, but he brightened when he saw me. "There's my girl," he said, reaching for my hand. "Don't worry about all this legal mumbo-jumbo. I'm making sure you're taken care of." But something in his eyes didn't match his reassuring words. Tension I had never seen before. "Is Dad pressuring you about something?" I asked directly. He sighed. "Families are complicated, Emily. Your father believes he deserves more control of the company. After all, he's worked there for 30 years. But he's never shown your vision or values," I protested. "You've always said so yourself." "I know what I've said," he replied, suddenly looking exhausted. "And I stand by it. Just know that whatever happens, I've done my best to protect what matters." As his condition worsened, so did my anxiety. I caught snippets of hushed arguments between my grandfather and my father. Twice I walked in to find my mother dabbing tears away, while Olivia sat smugly nearby. Something was happening, but I was being deliberately kept in the dark. In his final week, Grandpa Henry's lucidity came and went. During one clear moment, he beckoned me close. "Remember our fishing spot," he whispered, "and your favorite book in my library. The answers you'll need are there." I didn't understand what he meant, but I nodded anyway. "I love you, Grandpa." "I love you too, my brave girl." His eyes filled with tears. "Be careful with the family, my dear. Sometimes the people closest to us can hurt us the most." Those were the last meaningful words he spoke to me. 2 days later, he slipped into a coma. 3 days after that, with all of us gathered around his hospital bed, Henry Blackwell, founder of Blackwell Logistics, and the only person who had ever truly believed in me, took his last breath. I was shattered not just by grief, but by a growing sense of foreboding. Something had changed in those final weeks. Something I couldn't quite identify. As we left the hospital, my father put his arm around Olivia's shoulders while my mother held her hand. I walked behind them alone in my grief, unaware that the worst betrayal was yet to come. 1 week after the funeral, we gathered in Robert Ellis's office for the reading of the will. The conference room felt too cold, too formal for discussions about a man I had loved so deeply. I sat across from my parents and Olivia, all dressed in appropriate mourning attire, though Olivia's designer black dress seemed more suited for a fashion shoot than a somber legal proceeding. Robert cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. "Before I begin, I want to express my condolences to the family. Henry was not just a client, but a dear friend." My father nodded impatiently. "We appreciate that, Robert. Shall we proceed?" I noticed a strange hesitation in the attorney's demeanor as he opened the folder before him. He glanced at me briefly, something like apology in his eyes, before beginning to read. I, Henry Edward Blackwell, being of sound mind and body, do hereby revoke all previous wills and testaments. I sat up straighter, confused. Revoke all previous wills. Grandpa had told me years ago that his will was ironclad with me as the primary beneficiary and successor. As Robert continued reading, I felt as though I had stepped into some alternate reality. According to this document, Grandpa Henry had changed his mind entirely in his final months. The entirety of his estate valued at $10 million, including his controlling shares in Blackwell Logistics, was bequeathed to my sister Olivia. Furthermore, Robert read, his voice oddly flat. Michael Blackwell will serve as interim CEO and guardian of Olivia's business interests until such time as she has acquired sufficient experience to assume leadership of the company. My ears were ringing. This couldn't be happening. The room seemed to tilt around me as Robert continued reading terms and conditions that effectively cut me out of any meaningful role in the company I had dedicated my life to. To my granddaughter, Emily, Robert finally said, I leave this personal letter to be read in private. He slid a sealed envelope across the table. I stared at it, unable to comprehend what was happening. This had to be some kind of mistake or cruel joke. This can't be right, I finally managed to say. There must be some mistake. Grandpa promised the company to me. He trained me for this my entire life. Robert looked uncomfortable. I can only read what's in the legal document before me, Emily. This will was signed and witnessed 3 weeks before Henry's death. I turned to my parents. What did you do? What did you say to him when I wasn't allowed to visit? My father's face remained impassive. Your grandfather made his own decisions, Emily. Perhaps he finally recognized who truly had the company's best interests at heart. Or perhaps he finally saw through your act. Olivia added, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. You always thought you were so special, his little protégé. Turns out he had other plans. I felt sick. I want to read my letter, I said, reaching for the envelope. That will have to wait, my father said, standing abruptly. We have a company to run, Robert. I assume the transfer of shares can be expedited. Yes, the paperwork is prepared, Robert replied, though he still wouldn't meet my eyes. Wait, this isn't right, I protested, my voice rising. Grandpa would never do this. We need to investigate this will. It could be fraudulent. My mother gasped dramatically. How dare you? Your grandfather was of perfectly sound mind when he made these decisions. Just because you didn't get what you wanted doesn't mean you can make such accusations. I'm not leaving until I read my letter, I insisted, clutching the envelope. Fine, my father sighed. Read it later. Right now we need to discuss your future or lack thereof at Blackwell Logistics. As we left the attorney's office, I felt numb with shock. Everything I had worked for, everything I had been promised had been ripped away in a matter of minutes. I couldn't process the betrayal. It felt like my grandfather had reached beyond the grave to slap me in the face. Back at the family home, things went from bad to worse. As soon as we entered, my father turned to me, his expression cold. The board meeting is tomorrow morning. Your presence won't be required. What are you talking about? I asked. I'm the COO. Of course I need to be there. Not anymore, he said with satisfaction. As interim CEO, my first action will be to terminate your employment. The company is moving in a new direction. The floor seemed to drop from beneath my feet. You can't do that. I've earned my position. The employees respect me. The clients trust me. The employees will adjust. My mother chimed in. And the clients care about results, not personalities. Olivia flopped onto the sofa, examining her manicure. I think I'll take your office, Emily. The corner one with the view of the park. It suits my new position better. What position? I asked, incredulously. You don't know the first thing about logistics or international shipping? I'm a fast learner, she replied with a shrug. And unlike you, I won't be so uptight about everything. The company could use some fresh energy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My sister, who had spent her entire adult life as a professional socialite, was going to run the company my grandfather had built from nothing. The company I had dedicated my life to learning and improving. "This is insane," I said, looking from one family member to another. "Grandpa would never want this. Something happened in that hospital room. You manipulated him somehow." My father's face darkened. "That's enough, Emily. Your grandfather made his choice. Accept it with some dignity." "I want to know what was happening when you kept me from his room," I insisted. "What documents were you having him sign when he was drugged on pain medication? How dare you?" My mother shrieked. "We would never take advantage of him that way." But I saw it then, the flicker of guilt in her eyes before she masked it with indignation. They had done exactly that. "I'm going to fight this," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "This will is clearly not what Grandpa wanted. I'll contest it." My father laughed. A harsh sound, without humor. "With what money? Your salary is gone as of tomorrow. Your apartment is company-owned. Your car is a company lease." The full implications hit me then. They hadn't just taken my inheritance and my job. They had systematically stripped me of every resource I might use to fight back. "And one more thing," my father added, his voice dropping to a dangerous tone. "This house now belongs to Olivia. You have 24 hours to remove your personal belongings and find somewhere else to live." I stared at him in disbelief. The family home where I had lived all my life, where all my memories of Grandpa Henry resided, was no longer my home. "You can't be serious," I whispered. "Deadly serious," he replied. 24 hours, Emily. Then I want you gone." I went to my room in a daze, trying to process the magnitude of their betrayal. As I began pulling out suitcases, I noticed something odd. My drawers had been rifled through, possessions rearranged. Someone had been searching my room. Frantically, I checked my hiding spots. The journal where I documented conversations with Grandpa about the company's future was gone. So was the folder containing the business plan he and I had worked on together. Even my laptop had been tampered with, files mysteriously missing. They hadn't just betrayed me, they were actively destroying any evidence of Grandpa's true intentions. As night fell, I sat on my bed. The unopened letter from my grandfather clutched in my hands, wondering how my life had imploded so completely in a single day. The next morning dawned with an eerie calm that belied the storm raging inside me. I had barely slept, my mind racing with questions and half-formed plans. I needed time to think, to strategize, but time was the one thing my family wasn't giving me. I began packing methodically, trying to focus on practicalities rather than the ache in my chest: clothes, toiletries, important documents. What does one pack when being exiled from their own life? I found myself holding objects and wondering about their significance. The snow globe Grandpa brought me from Switzerland, the fountain pen he gave me when I graduated college. Small, tangible pieces of our relationship that suddenly seemed priceless. Around noon, I heard a sharp knock on my bedroom door before it swung open without waiting for my response. My mother stood there, arms crossed, surveying my packing progress with cold eyes. "Your father called from the office," she said. "The board unanimously approved your termination and Olivia's future position effective immediately." I continued folding a sweater, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. And how exactly did he convince the board that a social media influencer with zero business experience is qualified to run a multinational shipping company? Her lips thinned. "Your sister has hidden depths you've never appreciated, and the board respects your father's judgment." "Or afraid of him?" I countered. "Did he threaten their positions too?" "Don't be dramatic," she scoffed. "This attitude is precisely why your grandfather changed his mind about you, always thinking you know better than everyone else." I set down the sweater and faced her directly. "We both know Grandpa didn't change his mind. Something happened in that hospital room when you were keeping me away from him." A flicker of something like guilt crossed her face before hardening again into contempt. "You always were a difficult child, never satisfied, always questioning." Olivia accepts what she's given with gratitude. Olivia has been handed everything her entire life while I've worked for every opportunity, I replied. And now you're handing her a company she's completely unqualified to run. That's enough, she snapped. Just finish packing and go. The sooner you're out of our lives, the better for everyone. She turned to leave but paused at the door. And don't think about taking any company documents or property with you. Your father has already consulted with legal about pressing charges if necessary. The threat hung in the air as she left, closing the door with unnecessary force. I sat on the edge of my bed, trembling with anger and grief. How had the people who were supposed to love me become so cruel? I continued packing, moving faster now. I needed to get out of this house of betrayal. Needed space to think clearly about my next steps. As I packed the last of my clothes, my eyes fell on the framed photo of Grandpa Henry and me at my college graduation. His proud smile, his arm around my shoulders, the future of Blackwell Logistics. He had called me that day. I carefully wrapped the photo in a sweater and placed it in my bag. Whatever else happened, they couldn't take my memories or my relationship with him. I had almost finished when my bedroom door crashed open again. This time, it was my mother and Olivia both. Their expressions a mix of outrage and vindictive pleasure. "What do you think you're doing?" my mother demanded, pointing at my suitcase. "Exactly what Dad ordered." I replied evenly, packing my things and getting out. "Not with those? You're not," Olivia said, stepping forward and grabbing at my bag. These clothes were purchased with family money. The jewelry, too. "You're not entitled to any of it." I pulled the bag back, disbelieving. "Are you serious right now?" "These are my personal belongings. I've had some of these clothes since high school." "And who paid for them?" my mother asked coldly. "Everything in this house belongs to the family, and you're no longer part of this family." The cruelty of their words hit me like a physical blow. Not part of the family. After 29 years, they were erasing me completely. "You can't be serious," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. "You're going to send me away with nothing. No clothes, no personal items. You can have what you came into this world with," my mother replied. "Nothing." I clutched my bag tighter. "I'm taking my clothes and personal belongings. You can't stop me." "Watch us," Olivia sneered, lunging for my bag again. We struggled over it. A pathetic tug of war that ended when the bag ripped, spilling contents across the floor. Olivia immediately began sifting through the items, pulling out anything she deemed valuable. "This necklace is mine now," she declared, holding up the pearl pendant Grandpa had given me for my 21st birthday. "That was a gift from Grandpa," I protested, reaching for it. She yanked it away, her expression triumphant. "Too bad. Should have thought about that before you decided to challenge the will." My mother stood watching, making no move to intervene as Olivia continued confiscating my possessions. When she reached for the wrapped photo frame, something in me snapped. "No!" I shouted, grabbing it from her hands. "You've taken everything else. You don't get this too." Olivia's face contorted with rage. "Mom, she's not cooperating." My mother stepped forward, her voice ice cold. "Hand over the bag, Emily." "Now no," I said, backing away. "These are my things, my memories." "You have no right." "Michael," my mother called out. And to my shock, my father appeared in the doorway. I hadn't even realized he was home from the office. "What's the problem?" he asked, taking in the scene with calculating eyes. "She's refusing to leave empty-handed, as we discussed." My mother reported, making a scene as usual. My father's expression hardened. "I told you to be out by sundown, not to steal family property on your way out." "Steal? These are my clothes, my books, gifts given to me." I was shouting now, beyond caring about dignity or composure. "Not anymore," he said simply. Then everything happened so fast. I clutched my partially filled bag to my chest, determined not to let them take the last of my possessions. My father strode across the room, his face a mask of cold fury. He grabbed a fistful of my hair and yanked hard. Pain exploded across my scalp as he began dragging me toward the door. I screamed, dropping the bag to claw at his hand, but his grip only tightened. "Stop! You're hurting me," I cried out. "You brought this on yourself," he growled, continuing to drag me by the hair down the hallway toward the stairs. I stumbled and fell to my knees, but he didn't stop pulling me along the floor as my mother and Olivia followed behind, carrying what remained of my bag. "Please," I begged, tears streaming down my face from pain and humiliation. "Don't do this." He ignored my pleas, dragging me down the stairs and across the foyer, my knees and elbows scraping against the marble floor. With a final yank, he pulled me to the front door and shoved me roughly outside. I fell hard on the driveway, the gravel cutting into my palms. "You are no longer welcome in this house," he declared, standing over me. "If you return, I'll have you arrested for trespassing." My mother tossed a small purse beside me. "Your wallet and phone. The rest stays here." Through my tears, I saw Olivia standing in the doorway, her expression one of smug satisfaction. My childhood bedroom would become extra closet space for her designer clothes. My memories would be discarded like trash. Somehow, I found the strength to stand, my scalp still burning my body, aching from the rough treatment. I wiped the tears from my face and looked at the three of them standing there, these strangers who had once been my family. "You will regret this day," I said, my voice low but steady. "I promise you that." My father scoffed. Empty threats from someone with nothing. "Goodbye, Emily." The door slammed shut, leaving me alone on the driveway with nothing but my purse and the clothes on my back. Even in my worst nightmares, I had never imagined my family could be so cruel. I walked slowly down the long driveway, each step painful both physically and emotionally. At the gate, I turned back for one last look at the house where I had grown up, the house that held all my memories of Grandpa Henry. Now it was just another asset stolen from me. With nowhere else to go, I walked to the bus stop and sat on the bench trying to make sense of what had just happened. In the span of a week, I had lost my grandfather, my inheritance, my job, my home, and my family. I had been stripped of everything that defined my life. I checked my wallet. 2 credit cards that would likely be canceled as soon as my father thought of it. $370 in cash. My driver's license and health insurance card, though the insurance was through Blackwell Logistics, so that was probably void now too. Night was falling as I found a cheap motel on the edge of town. The desk clerk gave me a suspicious look as I checked in with no luggage, but I couldn't bring myself to care. In the stark, impersonal room, I finally allowed myself to break down completely. I cried for Grandpa Henry, for the relationship we had shared that my family had somehow managed to taint. I cried for the betrayal, for the cruelty that I still couldn't comprehend. I cried for my own naivety, for believing that blood meant loyalty. As exhaustion finally overtook me, one thought solidified in my mind. This was not the end of my story. Somehow, some way, I would find a path forward. I would discover what really happened in that hospital room, and I would reclaim what was rightfully mine. "They think they've won," I whispered into the darkness, "but they have no idea who they're dealing with." With that promise to myself, I fell into a troubled sleep, unaware that the key to my comeback was already in my possession, waiting to be discovered. I woke the next morning with swollen eyes and a throbbing scalp, but also with a clarity that had eluded me in the chaos of the previous day. I needed a plan, and to make a plan, I needed information. Most importantly, I needed to read the letter from my grandfather that I had stuffed into my pocket during the confrontation at home. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with just 3 sentences. "Remember our special place. Check your favorite book. Trust only Sarah." I stared at the cryptic message, turning it over to see if there was more, but the back was blank. Our special place could only mean one thing: The fishing spot at Lake Evergreen where we had spent countless Sundays together, and my favorite book had to be The Art of War by Sun Tzu, which Grandpa had given me on my 16th birthday, but it was still in his library now, controlled by my family. Sarah was easier to identify. Sarah Thompson had been my grandfather's executive assistant for over 20 years. A loyal and discreet woman who knew more about Blackwell logistics than anyone except Grandpa himself. If he told me to trust only her, there must be a reason. I checked my phone. No calls or texts from my family. Not that I expected any, but there were several missed calls and messages from coworkers at Blackwell expressing confusion and concern about my sudden termination. I would have to deal with that later. Right now, I needed to contact Sarah. I called her cell phone, praying she would answer. Emily, her voice was cautious. "Are you okay? I've been so worried." "Not really," I admitted. "Can we meet somewhere private? It's important." There was a pause. "Your father has instructed all employees not to have contact with you." My heart sank. "I understand if you can't risk your job." "I didn't say that," she replied firmly. "Henry was more than my boss. He was my friend, and he adored you. Meet me at Riverside Cafe in an hour. It's far enough from the office that no one should see us." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you, Sarah." Truly, I used the last of my cash to pay for the motel and a taxi to the cafe. Sarah was already waiting at a corner table, her expression concerned as she took in my appearance. "My God, Emily, what happened to you?" I touched my still tender scalp self-consciously. "My father happened. It's a long story." Over coffee, I told her everything from the will reading to being dragged out of my own home by my hair. Her expression grew increasingly horrified. "This isn't right," she said when I finished. "None of this is what Henry wanted." "You knew about his will?" I asked eagerly. She nodded, glancing around before leaning closer. "The original will left everything to you. He showed it to me himself last year. But 3 weeks before he died, Michael brought in a new lawyer. Not Robert Ellis, who had been Henry's attorney for decades, but someone new. They were in Henry's hospital room for hours. When they left, Henry seemed different, defeated somehow. Hope sparked within me. So the new will could be fraudulent or signed under duress. "I believe so," she said, "but proving it would be difficult. Your father was very careful." I showed her the cryptic note from Grandpa. "What do you think this means?" Sarah studied it thoughtfully. "The book reference is clear. Henry kept a hidden safe behind The Art of War in his library. As for the special place," she hesitated. "About a month before he was hospitalized, Henry asked me to set up a safety deposit box at First National Bank. He didn't tell me what he put in it, but he mentioned something about insurance against Michael's ambitions." My pulse quickened. "Did he give you a key?" "No, but he mentioned that the key would be where Emily and I caught our first fish together. Lake Evergreen, the old oak tree, where we had sat that Sunday morning when I was 7 years old, proudly holding up a small base while Grandpa beamed beside me. There was a hollow in that tree where we sometimes left messages for each other, a secret communication system that had been our special game." "I need to go there," I said decisively. "Today." "There's something else you should know," Sarah said, her voice dropping even lower. "In the weeks before his death, I overheard Michael and Henry arguing. Michael was threatening to expose some kind of financial irregularities unless Henry changed his will. I don't know the details, but Henry was furious. He said Michael was trying to blackmail him with his own misdeeds, my father blackmailing my grandfather. It seemed incredible, yet it would explain the sudden change in the will. Did you ever find out what these supposed irregularities were?" Sarah shook her head. "No, but whatever it was, it scared Henry enough that he started recording their conversations. He had me order a small digital recorder that looked like a pen. He kept it with him whenever Michael visited. The puzzle pieces were starting to fit together. Whatever my father had on Grandpa, he had created evidence to protect himself, evidence that might still exist. I need to get into the safety deposit box and find that book safe, I said. But I can't go back to the house. I can help with the book, Sarah offered. Henry asked me to keep some of his personal items at my home after he was diagnosed. Books, photos, mementos he didn't want lost if things went badly. The Art of War is among them. For the first time since Grandpa's death, I felt a flicker of hope. Sarah, you're amazing. When can I see these items come to my house tonight? My husband is away on business, so we'll have privacy. She hesitated. But Emily, you should know that your father is vindictive. If he discovers you're investigating, he might come after you even harder. I'm already at rock bottom, I said grimly. What more can he take from me? Your freedom, she warned. Michael has friends in the police department. Be careful. After leaving Sarah, I took a bus to Lake Evergreen. The park was quiet on a weekday afternoon, allowing me to make my way to our special fishing spot undisturbed. The old oak tree stood as it always had, silent witness to so many conversations between Grandpa and me. I approached the familiar hollow at the base of the trunk, heart pounding. Reaching in my fingers, touched something cool and metallic, a small key attached to a fishing lure we had used on that first trip. Grandpa had thought of everything. That evening at Sarah's modest home, she brought out a cardboard box filled with my grandfather's personal effects. On top was the leather-bound copy of The Art of War that had been his prized possession. He specifically mentioned this book several times. Sarah said it contained wisdom beyond its pages. I examined the book carefully, noticing that the binding seemed slightly thicker than it should be. Gently, I worked my fingers along the spine until I felt a small catch. With a soft click, a hidden compartment opened, revealing a USB drive and a folded piece of paper. The note read, "For Emily, the truth about Michael's betrayal. Use it wisely, my dear." Sarah brought her laptop, and with shaking hands, I inserted the USB drive. It contained dozens of audio files, each labeled with dates corresponding to the last 2 months of Grandpa's life. I clicked on the most recent one. Grandpa's weak voice filled the room. "I won't do it, Michael. I won't betray Emily." My father's reply was cold. "You don't have a choice, Dad. Either you sign the new will or I go public with the evidence. Your precious company will be destroyed, and your golden girl will watch your legacy crumble into a scandal. Those documents are manipulated, and you know it," Grandpa protested. "It doesn't matter what I know," my father sneered. "It's what I can make the board and the authorities believe. Sign the papers or everything you've built will be destroyed." I listened to file after file, each more damning than the last. My father had fabricated financial documents suggesting that Grandpa had been embezzling from the company for years. The allegations were false, but my father had created convincing evidence and threatened to take it to the board and the SEC if Grandpa didn't change his will. "He was protecting you and the company," Sarah said softly as the final recording ended. He knew that if Michael went public with those false allegations, even if they were eventually disproven, the damage to the company would be severe, and your reputation would be tarnished by association. So he sacrificed his own wishes to protect me. I whispered, tears filling my eyes, and I thought he had betrayed me. "He never stopped believing in you," Sarah assured me. "He told me once that you were the only one who truly understood what Blackwell Logistics stood for." The next morning, armed with the key from Lake Evergreen, I visited First National Bank. The safety deposit box contained exactly what I had hoped. The original will leaving everything to me notarized and legally binding. Documents proving that the signatures on the new will had been coerced, and a detailed account of my father's attempt to blackmail Grandpa with falsified evidence of financial misconduct. Most damning of all was a flash drive containing actual evidence of my father's own financial crimes. For years, he had been siphoning funds from Blackwell Logistics into offshore accounts using false invoices and shell companies to hide the embezzlement. "Oh, Dad," I murmured as I reviewed the documents. "You projected your own crimes onto Grandpa. I now had everything I needed to challenge the fraudulent will and expose my father's betrayal. But I couldn't do it alone. I needed legal help from someone who wouldn't be intimidated by my father's connections. Through Sarah's recommendation, I met with Andrew Hayes, a fierce litigator known for taking on powerful adversaries. In his downtown office, I laid out the evidence I had gathered. "This is explosive stuff," he said after reviewing the documents. "Your father committed multiple felonies here: fraud, coercion, embezzlement. He could face serious prison time." "And the will?" I asked. "Can we overturn it with this evidence?" "Absolutely. The original will is still valid since the new one was signed under duress and contains forged elements." He leaned forward, "But you should be prepared for a fight. Your father won't go down easily." "I'm counting on it," I replied, a new determination hardening within me. He dragged me out of my home by my hair and left me with nothing. I want him to face the consequences of his actions. Over the next 2 weeks, Andrew and I built our case meticulously. We obtained sworn statements from Grandpa's doctors confirming his compromised mental state during the signing of the new will. We gathered testimony from hospital staff who had witnessed Michael's threatening behavior, and we compiled a forensic accounting of my father's embezzlement scheme, documenting every penny he had stolen from Blackwell Logistics. Meanwhile, I reached out to key members of the company's board of directors, people who had known and respected me during my years at Blackwell. Without revealing our full strategy, I arranged a special board meeting to discuss concerns about the company's direction. The trap was set. All that remained was to spring it. The morning of the board meeting dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to the storm I was about to unleash. I dressed carefully in a suit I had purchased with a loan from Andrew, who had agreed to work on contingency after seeing the strength of my case. Sarah had helped me prepare, providing inside information about the company's current operations and my father's vulnerable points. "Are you ready for this?" Andrew asked as we approached the Blackwell Logistics headquarters, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that had once felt like my second home. "I've been ready since the moment they threw me out," I replied, straightening my shoulders. "Let's go." The security guard at the front desk did a double take when he saw me. "Miss Blackwell." We were told that I no longer work here." I smiled. "That's one of the matters we'll be clearing up today, Thomas. I have a meeting with the board." He hesitated, clearly unsure of protocol. "I should call Mr. Blackwell." "That won't be necessary," came a voice from behind us. Sarah stood there, key card in hand. "Miss Emily is expected in the boardroom." "I'll escort her up." In the elevator, Sarah squeezed my hand. "The whole executive floor is buzzing. Your father has been in a closed-door meeting with Olivia all morning. They know something's happening, but not what." "Good," I said. "I want the element of surprise." The boardroom was nearly full when we arrived. 10 of the 12 board members were seated around the massive oak table along with several senior executives. My father sat at the head of the table looking irritated. Olivia sat beside him, scrolling through her phone with a bored expression. Neither of them noticed me at first. "What is the meaning of this emergency meeting?" my father was demanding of Victor Lee, the board chairman. "I have actual business to conduct today." "I believe that's my cue," I said clearly, stepping into the room. The reaction was immediate. My father's head snapped up, his face contorting with shock and then rage. Olivia dropped her phone with a clatter. The board members murmured among themselves, several looking pleased to see me. "Security!" my father bellowed, half rising from his chair. "This woman is trespassing." "Sit down, Michael," Victor said firmly. "We invited Emily to this meeting. There are serious matters to discuss." My father's face flushed dark red. "This is outrageous. She has no standing here. She's been terminated." "About that termination," I said calmly, moving to stand at the opposite end of the table from my father. "It was conducted under false pretenses, as was the reading of my grandfather's will. But I'm getting ahead of myself." I nodded to Andrew, who began distributing folders to each person at the table. "Who the hell is this?" my father demanded, glaring at Andrew. "Andrew Hayes, counsel for Emily Blackwell." He replied smoothly. Please review the documents before you. They contain evidence of serious misconduct that the board needs to address immediately. As the board members opened their folders, I watched their expressions shift from curiosity to shock to outrage. The folders contained concise summaries of my father's embezzlement scheme, the coercion of my grandfather, and the fraudulent will, along with supporting evidence for each allegation. "This is preposterous," my father sputtered, flipping through the pages. "These are fabrications, lies." "Are they?" I asked quietly. I nodded to Sarah, who connected her laptop to the room's audio system. The recorded conversation between my father and grandfather filled the room, his threats echoing clearly for all to hear. The color drained from my father's face as his own voice condemned him. Olivia looked up from the documents, her expression stunned. "Dad," she whispered, "what did you do?" When the recording ended, I spoke into the silence. My grandfather Henry Blackwell built this company on principles of integrity and fairness. In his final days, when he was vulnerable and dying, his own son-in-law betrayed those principles. My father fabricated evidence of financial misconduct, threatened to destroy Grandpa's reputation, and forced him to sign a fraudulent will that went against his explicit wishes. I placed my hands on the table, leaning forward. But Grandpa was smarter than he gave him credit for. He created a record of everything and ensured that the truth would come to light. Victor Lee looked grim as he closed his folder. "Michael, these allegations are extremely serious. If even half of this is true, we're talking about criminal behavior." "It's all true," I said firmly. "And there's more. The financial documents in Section 3 detail how my father has been embezzling from Blackwell Logistics for at least 5 years. Over $2 million diverted to offshore accounts through fabricated invoices and shell companies." Several board members gasped. My father's face had gone from red to ashen. "This is a setup," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "She's trying to take control by slandering me." "It's not slander if it's true," Andrew interjected, "and we have documentation for every allegation." In fact, he nodded toward the doorway where 2 men in suits had just entered. "These gentlemen from the SEC's Enforcement Division would like to ask you some questions about those offshore accounts." My father's eyes widened in panic. He looked around the room seeking allies but found none. Even Olivia had moved her chair away from him, her expression a mix of confusion and betrayal. Michael Blackwell, one of the SEC agents, said formally, "We need you to come with us to answer questions regarding possible securities fraud and embezzlement at Blackwell Logistics." "You can't do this," my father said, looking desperately at the board members. "I'm the CEO." "Not anymore," Victor Lee replied, standing. "As chairman of the board, I am placing you on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Security will escort you from the building after your conversation with these gentlemen." As the agents led my stunned father toward the door, he stopped beside me. "You'll regret this," he hissed under his breath. "I'm still your father." I met his gaze steadily. "No. You lost that right when you dragged me by my hair and threw me onto the street. A real father would never do that to his child." After my father was escorted out, Victor turned to Olivia. "Miss Blackwell, in light of these developments, your provisional position is also terminated effective immediately." Olivia looked shell-shocked. "But the will? The inheritance?" "The will your father forced our grandfather to sign is invalid," I explained, softening my tone slightly. "The original will, which leaves everything to me, has been verified as authentic and legally binding." "So I get nothing?" she asked, her voice small. I could have been cruel in that moment, could have savored her distress as payback for her smug satisfaction when I was thrown out, but that wasn't who I wanted to be. "We'll discuss your situation privately," I said instead. "You were as much a pawn in Dad's scheme as anyone. He used you to get what he wanted." The remainder of the meeting was a blur of legal discussions and transitional planning. By unanimous vote, the board reinstated me as Chief Operations Officer and named me Interim CEO until a formal succession plan could be implemented. As the meeting adjourned, board members came to shake my hand, many expressing their relief at my return. "Your grandfather would be proud," Victor told me quietly. "He always said you had steel in your spine. Today, you proved him right." As the boardroom emptied, I found myself alone with Olivia, who sat slumped in her chair looking lost. "What happens now?" she asked, not meeting my eyes. "Dad will likely face criminal charges," I said honestly. "Mom, too, if she was involved in the coercion the company will recover." "And you," I sighed. "That depends on you, Olivia. How much did you know about what they were doing?" She shook her head. "Not the embezzlement or threats. They just told me Grandpa had changed his mind about you, that he thought you were too controlling and wanted me to have a chance." She looked up, tears in her eyes. "I believed them because I wanted to. I was always jealous of your relationship with him." It wasn't a full apology, but it was perhaps as close as Olivia could come right now. "We have a lot to work through," I told her. "But we're still sisters. That has to count for something." In the days that followed, the legal machinery ground forward inexorably. My father was formally charged with fraud, embezzlement, and coercion. My mother, who had been aware of the scheme, faced lesser charges as an accomplice. The original will was reinstated by the court, returning my inheritance and control of Blackwell Logistics to me, as Grandpa had always intended. I moved back into the family home, reclaiming my space and the memories it held. Olivia chose to move into an apartment downtown, a first step toward the independence she had never been encouraged to develop. Our relationship remained fragile, but there was a tentative bridge forming between us. 1 month after the board meeting, I visited my father in the detention center where he awaited trial. He seemed smaller somehow, the power and arrogance stripped away by the orange jumpsuit and the knowledge of what he had lost. "Have you come to gloat?" he asked as I sat across from him. "No," I replied truthfully. "I came to understand why you hated me enough to destroy everything." He was silent for a long moment. "I didn't hate you," he finally said. "I hated that Henry saw in you what he never saw in me, potential vision, a worthy successor. I gave 30 years to that company and he never once looked at me the way he looked at you. So you decided to take everything from me. I decided to take what I deserved," he corrected. "What I had earned through years of loyalty, it wasn't personal." I laughed without humor. "You dragged me by my hair and threw me onto the street." "That felt pretty personal, Dad." He had the grace to look away. "I lost control. The stress, the fear of being caught." "Save it for the judge," I said, rising. "I didn't come for excuses. I came to tell you that despite everything you did, you failed. Grandpa's legacy is intact. The company is thriving, and I am exactly where he always meant me to be." As I turned to leave, he called after me. "Emily, will you visit again?" I paused, not turning back. "I don't know. Some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned. Goodbye, Dad." Walking out of that detention center, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of closure. The battle was over. I had won. Now came the harder part. Building something meaningful from the ashes of betrayal. 6 months passed like a whirlwind. Blackwell Logistics not only survived the scandal, but thrived under my leadership. I implemented the modernization plans that Grandpa and I had developed together, expanding our operations into emerging markets and embracing sustainable shipping practices that positioned us at the forefront of the industry. The emotional recovery was slower than the professional one. There were nights when I woke in a cold sweat, the sensation of my father's hand in my hair still painfully vivid. There were days when the emptiness of the family home reminded me of all I had lost, not just Grandpa, but the illusion of family that had sustained me for 29 years. I began seeing Dr. Elena Ramirez, a therapist specializing in family trauma. In her cozy office with its soft lighting and comfortable chairs, I gradually unpacked the complex emotions surrounding my family's betrayal. What hurts most, I admitted during one session, isn't the money or even the company. It's that they could do this to me at all. That our shared blood meant so little to them. Family isn't just about blood, Dr. Ramirez replied gently. It's about choices. Your parents and sister made their choices. Now you get to choose who constitutes your family moving forward. Those words resonated deeply. I began to recognize the true family that had formed around me. Sarah, whose loyalty to Grandpa had extended to me in my darkest hour, Andrew, whose belief in justice had helped me reclaim what was rightfully mine, Victor, and the other board members who had welcomed me back with respect and confidence. Even Olivia and I were cautiously building a new kind of relationship. After her initial shock wore off, she had enrolled in business courses at the local university. I want to understand what you and Grandpa saw in all this, she explained during one of our monthly dinners. I want to be worth something on my own merits. I surprised myself by offering her an entry-level position in the marketing department where her social media savvy actually proved valuable. No nepotism, I warned her. You'll be evaluated on your performance like anyone else. She had accepted the challenge with unexpected grace. I wouldn't want it any other way. My mother's situation was more complicated. She had accepted a plea deal to testify against my father receiving probation instead of jail time. She moved to Florida, sending occasional emails that alternated between self-justification and tentative apologies. I wasn't ready to forgive her, but I no longer burned with anger when I saw her name in my inbox. Progress of a sort. My father was sentenced to 8 years for fraud and embezzlement. I attended the sentencing but made no victim impact statement. There was nothing left to say. Whatever relationship we might have in the future would have to be built from scratch, if at all. On the anniversary of Grandpa Henry's death, I visited his grave alone. The simple granite headstone bore his name and the dates of his life along with the words he had chosen. What we do for ourselves dies with us. What we do for others remains immortal. I placed a small fishing lure beside the flowers I had brought, a memento of our special place. I kept my promise, Grandpa, I said aloud. I protected what you built. The company is stronger than ever. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the oak tree shading his grave, and I could almost hear his voice. I never doubted you for a moment, my brave girl. That evening, I hosted a small dinner at my home for the people who had helped me through the darkest period of my life. Sarah and her husband Andrew and his partner Victor Lee and his wife. As we shared stories and laughter, I realized that these people chosen rather than born into my life had become my true family. After dinner, I stood to make a toast. 1 year ago, I thought I had lost everything. I began my grandfather, my inheritance, my purpose. I was literally thrown out onto the street with nothing but the clothes on my back. I looked around at the caring faces surrounding me. What I didn't realize then was that material things, even meaningful ones like a family business, can be taken away. But who we are, the resilience and integrity that define us, cannot be stolen by anyone. I raised my glass to Grandpa Henry, who taught me that the most valuable inheritance isn't money or property, but the strength to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. And to all of you who helped me discover that family isn't defined by blood, but by those who stand beside us when we need them most. Later, after my guests had departed, I sat in Grandpa's old leather chair in the library, surrounded by his books and the quiet wisdom they contained. I opened The Art of War to the passage he had underlined years ago. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. How right he had been. The chaos of betrayal had created the opportunity to discover my own strength, to build something meaningful on my own terms, to create a family of choice rather than circumstance. The journey hadn't been easy. The pain of betrayal would always be part of my story, but it no longer defined me. I had transformed that pain into purpose, that betrayal, into strength. I thought of the frightened, heartbroken woman who had spent her first night of homelessness in a cheap motel wondering if she would ever recover from the devastating loss. If I could speak to her now, I would tell her that the darkest moments often precede the most profound growth. That sometimes we need to lose everything external to discover the resources within ourselves. That betrayal, as painful as it is, can be the catalyst for building something more authentic and meaningful than what was lost. As I closed the book and placed it back on the shelf, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for months. The circle was complete. Justice had been served. Grandpa's legacy was secure, and I had emerged from the fire not just intact, but transformed. Life would continue to present challenges. Of course, running a company in today's complex business environment would never be simple. Healing the wounds of family betrayal would take time, perhaps a lifetime. But I now face these challenges from a position of hard-won wisdom and strength. Greed can turn family into strangers, I reflected. But resilience can turn strangers into a new kind of family. The betrayal that was meant to destroy me instead revealed what truly matters, and for that, I can almost be grateful. Standing at the window looking out at the city lights spreading before me, I whispered a final thank you to the grandfather who had prepared me for this journey in ways neither of us could have anticipated. We did it, Grandpa. Not for the money or the power, but for the truth and your honor. In the quiet of that moment, I felt a profound certainty that wherever he was, he knew, and he was proud. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you find the strength to rebuild your life afterward? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Remember to like this video if you found my journey inspiring. Subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and redemption, and share with someone who might need to know they're not alone in their struggles. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes our greatest challenges lead to our most meaningful transformations.